So you bought the Helios 44-2 and added a Mir 1B, but now you're looking for something even wider. The next Soviet lens in the line should be the Mir 10A 28mm f3.5. But the price of the Mir 10A is stupid expensive now, and why would you even want to pay so much for an f3.5 lens? There got to be a better option of a cheap lens that is often overlooked by many, which has an uncommon focal length, a brand many have forgotten, and the lenses being so cheap that people think it's not worth spending money on it. Well, I have found it. The lens that fits all this is the Pentacon 29mm f2.8, which can be found selling for less than 20 bucks, and many have forgotten the brand Pentacon. But can this cheap vintage lens be a great wide-angle option for the Helios? That is what I'm going to find out in this video. But first, a not-so-brief history. In the 1950s, a Soviet company, GOY made the Mir 4 29mm f3.5 prototype lens. It proved the concept by adding a single diverging lens to widen a basic lens, but it costed too much to mass produce. While in Görlitz, Germany, Hubert Ulrich designed a more cost-effective 5-element lens with the Meyer Lidif 30mm f3.5. A decade later, in 1964, Hubert Ulrich improved the design, and it shows how much effort it takes to gain that 1mm, as it takes the design from 5 elements to 7, and in 1966 the Meyer Orestagon 29mm f2.8 was released. 2 years later, in 1968, Meyer Görlitz was integrated into VEB Pentacon, and in 1970 they briefly renamed the lens to Pentaconar before settling down for a shorter Pentacon 29mm f2.8. Later, in the mid-70s, they improved the lens by adding multi-coating to improve the light transmission and lessening the internal reflections. At the time, they also changed the look of the lens following Japanese trends. The lens was supposed to have halted production in 1989 as it was replaced by its successor. However, an outsourced factory in Romania kept producing the lens, and people still could purchase the lens new till 1994, and it outlived its successor. The Orestagon or Pentacon 29mm f2.8 could possibly be one of the most produced add-on lenses in history. And that is why you can find a lot of them on the used market with various prices, and if you are lucky you can still pick one up for less than 20 bucks, which is crazy cheap for what this lens can do. I bought one of the later Pentacon Auto multi-coating version with an M42 mount, and it has a noticeable blue coating which also causes a blue flare. But before I can test this lens, I have to get it mounted on my camera and a quick Cinemod, making it easier to film with. I used the Fusnit M42 to EF adapter, which has a perfect snug fit and enabled the lens to be in the correct orientation when it's mounted on my camera. The Pentacon version I've got has a 55mm filter thread, which I added a 80mm OD ring. And the focus ring has a diameter of 60mm, and I've got the Tilta 59 to 61mm seamless focus gear ring to finish the mod. This lens being 29mm, it's a no-brainer that this would be used for a wide shot showing the whole scene or for the establishing shot. Something to look out for is that the sides can get quite fuzzy while the center of the shot is sharp, which is quite similar to the Helios 44-2, where it draws the attention better to what is in the center of your framing. But if you use this lens on APS-C, you would crop out most of the soft corners. To my surprise, the Pentacon is also great for capturing medium shots, as it still does a great job of separating the subject from the background. And of course, getting a medium close shot, you can see how the bokeh is getting visible, but also how it swirls. The swirl on the Pentacon actually looks way more closer to the Helios 44-2 than the Mir 1B. Especially in the close-ups, the swirly backgrounds become very pronounced, and because of the wide angle, it becomes also a quite crazy shot. However, the Pentacon can even do extreme close-ups due to the minimum focus of 25 cm. You can really get into the face of your subjects. It might look a bit unnatural due to how wide the lens is, but it does give a certain feel to the shot, especially if you want to make it feel unnatural. But it's really great capturing small things up and close, especially capturing plants and flowers with such a wide view, giving you a different view of the world. While the bokeh of the Pentacon is soft and also a little bit bubbly, it isn't causing a distracting background, and more often result in a much more filmic background. Especially when we letterbox the shot to scope, we get a very filmic result. Also because there is a bit of oval bokeh visible, and also the background has some stretch texture, which also gives it a anamorphic vibe. The Pentacon has a 6-blade aperture and the bokeh does become hexagonal shaped, but because of the slightly rounded hexagon shapes, it's not too obvious of the hexagon going on, and also it's not very distracting. The focus throw of this lens is 100 degrees, but this is a wide angle lens which often has a short throw to infinity. There is lens breathing, but in reality most cinema lenses also has lens breathing, and personally I don't find it a big issue. The lens does bloom and flares. There is also a specific angle where the lens hazes up the entire image, but it's easy to use a flag to keep it away. I purposely chose the blue coating knowing it would cause a blue flare, which also makes a quite similar look to the flares from the Cook lenses. And at night you don't really have to worry much about street lights, only from specific angles they can cause like a haze, but most of the time they don't. And the flares from the headlights of cars only occurs if you put your camera at the same height as the headlights, but most often they don't really cause a flare. It being an f2.8 lens, it's not really that fast for filming at night, so you do have to bump up your ISO to get like a good exposure. I noticed if there is any light close by, I can use like ISO 1600. However, most shots I noticed I was mostly on ISO 3200. And the final test, there is some barrel distortion if you film a brick wall, but most of the time you will not notice such a barrel distortion, and more often this kind of barrel distortion often adds to give the image a more anamorphic vibe. Personally, I like the image using the Pentacon more than the Mir 1B. The Pentacon just feels more easier to work with, and also especially the close focus of 25 centimeters. And I don't mind the flares on the Pentacon that much, as it often gives more of a filmic result. But you might think, how does the Pentacon fit in with the range while the Helios and the Mir are Soviet copies of the Zeiss lenses? Well, the Pentacon in 1985 was integrated with VEB Carl Zeiss Jena, and for a brief moment the Pentacon 29mm f2.8 was renamed to the Carl Zeiss Jena 29mm f2.8, making the lens being in the actual Carl Zeiss Jena line, even though this is just for a short production run before it got replaced by its successor, the Carl Zeiss Jena or Pentacon Practicar 28mm f2.8 in 1987. So this lens started as a major optic Corliss lens, became a Pentacon, and ended its life as a Carl Zeiss Jena. And because of this history, this is actually a lens that could fit in quite well with the other Carl Zeiss Jenas and also the Carl Zeiss Jena copies. Hope you found this an interesting video. If you have any questions, comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.